do that. So brilliant. So hi everybody. Yes, my name is Tanya Sesmanero and I am a career coach. So I help people to work out the direction that they want their career to take. If some people get to a place in their lives where they're at a crossroads and they don't really know whether they want to carry on with the career they're in or whether they want to change to something new. So I help people work that out. And I also help people to get jobs. My background is in HR, so human resources. I've done a lot of sifting through CVs and interviewing people. So I got a lot of experience of that. And I now work from the other side and help the individual who needs to get that job to write an effective CV and to sell themselves at interview. So let's not be shy at interview, and I help people to really practice and show their best self. So let's get started. I'm absolutely really excited with the fact that I've got it both in English and is it Cantonese? Is that right? Yeah. I've never seen it like that. So such a beautifully written language. Right, so let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to look at how to write an effective CV, and then we'll move on to the interview skills. So my first tip, if you like, is to start strong. So make an impression. You have 7 seconds to make an impact. Whatever country you're in, that is essentially what we say is that people really nowadays don't have much time. And so they look at a CV and they just quickly scan, usually the beginning bit, and then turn over and maybe see which companies you've worked in. So you need to really make a good impression from the start. And, you know, it's your sales document at the end of the day. It enables you to tell people a little bit about yourself, to make them think, okay, you know, this person looks interesting. I want to interview them. So, you know, they're getting loads and loads of CVs. You need to stand out. So how can you do that? Well, your personal profile. Now, this is the section that we would expect to see at the top of a CV that gives you a little bit of an introduction into you and who you are. This is one of the most important sections because it's at the start. And if you've only got 7 seconds to impress them, you need to really hit them between the eyes, first of all. So usually, it would be your key skills. You summarize your key skills in about 5 or 6 lines. You don't want it to be too long. It's all about, you know, short and to the point, really, giving people a kind of idea of who you are, what you can bring to the table, and your career aims, so what you're looking for. Also, another tip is to maximize readability. So what do I mean by that? Well, to be honest, about 3/4 of CVs are rejected due to bad grammar, bad spelling, or poor visual layout. So what you need to do is make it sure that people can read it. And obviously, you know, I'm presuming for almost all of you, if not all of you, English is your second language. So it'd be really helpful if you can find somebody who's got, you know, really excellent English to just look over it. I mean, I say this to English people as well. You can read your CV so many times you miss like certain words that you haven't spelled correctly, or you've worded things slightly wrong. And sometimes spell check doesn't pick things up, unfortunately. So I saw a CV recently that said stong, S-T-O-N-G, and it was supposed to be strong, S-T-R-O-N-G, and spell check hadn't picked it up, weirdly. So it's little things. It needs to be look really good and have that good spelling. So try and find someone that can check over things. So it needs to be 2 sides of A4 as well. I think the longest CV I've ever seen, which shocked me slightly, was 16 pages. 16 pages of a CV. And that was too long, funnily enough. A lot of people, you see 3 or 4 sides of A4. We want 2 sides nowadays. It isn't giving your life story. You can talk in the interview much more and expand on your experience. It is just a snapshot, if you understand that. So it's just a bit of a brief introduction to who you are and what you can do, and which you then go on to expand on. So it doesn't need to be long, because people just don't want to read long, and actually some places even ask for a 1-pager, so 1 side of A4. Now that's very hard to do when you've got a lot of experience, so it's only if people ask for it that I would usually say do it, and then it would be, you know, you wouldn't be able to say very much about your experience, but generally the idea is 2 sides. So I keep forgetting that I need to click again to get the Cantonese up. Okay. Also lots of white space. So not only am I making you put it all just onto 2 sides of A4, you also need lots of white space, because cramming lots of text onto 2 sides where it's you know, and you're making it, maybe you're putting it into like the typeface, the size of the print is like really small. It's just really hard for people to read, and if your eyes are failing you like mine are these days, and you know, I keep needing to take my glasses off to read things, then I need nice big, you know, size 11 print so that I can see it clearly, and lots of white space and a nice structure. It's just you want it to be easy for them to pick out the key points, so you want to use bullet points. You want to put headings in, so it's really easy for somebody to look through your CV and find what they need to find on it. Sorry, I get that. I can't see that right. And as I've said, no typos or grammatical errors. It can really, I mean, particularly if, you know, the job that you're going for, you've said that you've got great attention to detail. If you've then got lots of mistakes, spelling mistakes on your CV, then people are going to go, well, you know, that's doesn't show an attention to detail. So it is really important, and I know it is so much more difficult when English is your second language. And now I wanted to come on to the sort of what you put into a CV. So back in the day when I was looking for jobs in my 20s, it was all about really a CV. You listed the sort of things that you'd done, the tasks, you know, so maybe you, I don't know, kind of completed Excel spreadsheets or did some filing or whatever it might be. And now it's not like that anymore. It's all about demonstrating your achievements. So it's showing on your CV what you can do. People want to be able to almost picture you in that role. So they go, oh, they've done this. Oh, okay, I can see that they could do really well in the role that you're wanting to work in. So avoid generic phrases, you know, works well independently and in a team kind of is such a common thing to find on a CV. And you can put stuff like that, but maybe just try and think about how you could put it slightly differently. But also, you know, really what we're looking for is these real life examples that show what you can do, that really bring your CV to life. So what is really useful, and it depends on the role that you're going for. So if you're in sales, for example, it's easier for you because people want facts, they want figures. Often it's really good. So if you can say, oh, you know, I got 110% of my sales target or whatever, you're sort of showing, or you saved the company money. And I saved the company £100,000 or £1 million or whatever it was. So whatever, if you can use a figure, it just is really good to highlight what you've done. You know, I've done this, but not everybody is blessed with, you know, being in a job where you can use figures. Pretty hard for me as a coach to kind of use figures. So it's about, you know, what you've achieved. So it would be like, okay, for me recently, I coached 2 individuals over a number of sessions, and they have recently both in CVs and interview skills and all that kind of, and they've recently both found a job in the city. So that's, you know, I'm showing that these two, I work with these 2 people and they have, you know, got the result they wanted, which was they have got a job. So it's showing what you can do, rather than saying, I could say I worked with 2 individuals on CVs and interview skills. And that's great that I've said that, but I haven't shown an outcome. And the outcome is really the thing that people want to know. They want to know that you're good at what you do, and you could achieve great results. So a way of kind of helping bring your CV to life is using these action words. Oh, hang on, let's bring that up. My personal hate is the words responsible for. I once saw a CV where it just had bullet points, and the start of every bullet point was responsible for, responsible for, responsible for, responsible for. If you're responsible for something, you could actually not really be doing very much. You're just responsible for it, and maybe you're just overseeing it and somebody else is doing all the work. So it doesn't really tell me what your contribution was to it. Whereas if you use action words like, you know, devised, enhanced, generated, that kind of thing. If you negotiated a deal and you know, you won a contract for X amount of money, or you delivered some training and got some really great feedback, or you know, you implemented a project and it was delivered on time and on budget. All these kinds of things, you're showing much more what you're doing through using those action orientated words. Okay. So next we come on to tailoring your CV. So what do I mean by tailoring your CV? So your CV is not a one-size-fits-all document. So as annoying as it is, because it's very time-consuming, you do need to tailor your CV for each job you're applying for, because you need to show really that, you know, you've really looked at the job and you're really showing off what it's asking of you, so that they can see you again working in this role. So what most people do is they have a general CV that's a pretty good solid CV, and then they slightly change some bits just to make it more relevant to the role you're applying for, because certain roles might particularly want someone that's skilled in one area, and another job you apply for might want someone that's, you know, it's the same job that you're applying for, but they want someone that's got slightly different skills. So you need to kind of really bring those out on your CV depending on the role. And so that's what I've just said. Ensure the skills and experience you highlight are the most relevant. And also use the job description and the company website to help you. So really tailor it. Look at the job description. What I tend to say is look at the job description, and you can do this for interviews as well. What you're looking for is what do they keep talking about? What are the sort of key things that they keep mentioning? So Maybe they're talking about someone needs to have really sort of effective communication skills. So you want to make sure that you've got somewhere on your CV that you've got effective communication skills, maybe even 2 or 3 times, to really, in different places, to really highlight that you've got those skills. And if it talks about that on the job description in an interview, they probably will ask you about your communication skills. So again, you need to think about how you can show that you've got good communication skills. So it's all about looking at it, and also with the hard skills, what are the sorts of things that they're asking you for? Do you need, I don't know, to be able, I'm going back to Excel, do you need to be able to manipulate data or on Excel or whatever? Have you highlighted that? You might think, well, of course I can, everyone can within this role that I'm going for. Well, you do need to highlight these things and make sure it's clear on your CV. Okay, I said everything I need. Right, beat the bots. What do I mean by beat the bots? So a lot of companies nowadays, and it does depend on the industry that you're working in and the size of the company, but a lot of companies who probably have over 250 employees, but even some smaller ones, do like to use something called an applicant tracking system. Applicant tracking system. So an applicant tracking system is a computer system which has been programmed with key information from the job description, and then the computer searches the CVs that are being submitted for this role, and it finds those CVs that have got the information that is relevant and matches the job description. So that's why I say tailor your CV to it, because a lot of places use these systems, and if you haven't tailored your CV, it might not have the information that this computer system is looking for. So it's looking through, so you haven't even got to a human being, and this computer is looking through all the hundreds of CVs that have been submitted, and you want to be chosen by this computer. So what do you need to do? As well as having these keywords, there's certain things, because it's a computer system, sometimes it struggles with certain things. So one of the things is that it doesn't always notice the information in headers and footers. It just doesn't see them. So you don't want to be putting your name and all your important details in the header. Keep it in the body of the text. Just let that sink in a bit. And use a simple template. This frustrates me a little bit because I see some really good CVs, really interesting, creative CVs. But unfortunately, if you are going for a job in a larger organization, these computer systems, these applicant tracking systems, can't read CVs that are complicated. I'm just going to bring these all up because I might talk about them out of order, because I've already talked about the keywords, for example. So if you have, I've got their images, text boxes, charts, lots of columns all over your CV, it might get confused and mix all the words up, and it just won't be able to read it properly. It's unfortunate. With a creative, somebody that's wanting to work in the sort of marketing field and wants to show, or like, I don't know, design, and they want to show their creativity, I often say that, people often now have sort of online creative profiles and things, and so you can put a link to your creative profile and show your creativity in that way rather than doing it on the CV. So a simple template. Yeah, we don't use photographs on CVs here, by the way, so we don't want a photograph of you on there. We have quite stringent, strong discrimination laws here, And we feel that if there's a photograph of somebody on there, then it could lead to discrimination of age, race, all sorts of things. So we prefer to not have a photo. I'll also use a compatible file type. Some people submit their CV as a PDF document, and PDFs aren't often can't get through the ATS system again. So it is better to submit your CV as a Word document. As I said, the whole readability, use the simple bullet points, so it makes it really clear. And I've already talked about including relevant keywords, and make sure you use them several times so that it picks up on them. Okay. So just have a look at how we're doing for time. Good. So I thought I'd show you a bit of an example of a good and a bad CV. I'm just going to take a drink of water. So this would be a bad CV that I found on the internet. So I don't know if people are expecting, I don't know how good people's English are in here, but I'll give it a go. I just want, if people are willing, and if no one speaks, then I'll just carry on. But I would like to your feedback on what you think is wrong with this CV, why it's a bad CV. Anyone want to give me any thoughts on this at all?
You can unmute yourselves if you want to answer just to give your thoughts on the CV, please.
He just gave a very brief description of himself, and he didn't mention, just like just Tanya said, how does he achieve his work when he is working in a company. He just lists out the time that he worked in each company. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's no detail there whatsoever, is there? Which is, and even the little bit of detail in the personal profile doesn't really give you very much. Just talks about a hardworking individual who enjoys working. So that doesn't give me very much. He does say that he's excellent at meeting deadlines. But again, he's repeating words. I have 2 years of experience in business, and I'd like to contribute to a business with my excellent skills. What excellent skills are they? And past work experience, which he hasn't said very much about. So definitely that is one of the key things. Yes, thank you for that. I don't know who that was, but thank you very much, whoever you were. Anybody else got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think to me it gives me a lot of data about this person, but no insights, as you said. Excellent skill. What's the excellent skill? What he actually achieved in the past? That demonstrated excellent skills.
Yes, absolutely. And we don't really even know who this person is, because they've just put curriculum vitae at the top, and it'd be very nice if we could actually have a name at the top. We don't need a curriculum vitae at the top. The other things to mention, has anyone else got any thoughts before I carry on? No? Okay, well, let me give you a few more details of what I think is not great about this, because it's always good. We can always learn quite a lot from what other people do wrong. So you've got the address here, which is fine, and you can include, it's not essential to include an address nowadays. Some CV writers think it is, some CV writers think it isn't, so there's a bit of discussion about that. What I think is useful is just to know an area. So, are you in London? Are you in Birmingham? Because then people can understand whether you would be able to work in the office or whatever. So it gives people an idea of a location within the United Kingdom. But you don't necessarily, I would always put, personally put kind of, I come from Maidenhead in Berkshire, so I would put Maidenhead, Berkshire, and possibly my postcode, but I wouldn't give them my entire, road and everything. Also, the email is not very professional. Cool guy 007. So I would make sure that you have a professional email address that you can get jobs information sent to and from. And actually nowadays, as I said about discrimination, you don't need to put your date of birth on because that can lead to age discrimination. You don't want to put your gender on. We don't put nationality, and we don't put marital status on. So we don't want any of those things. We just telephone number and email sufficient. Also with the education, he's put right from nursery. I mean, it's being a bit silly, but you know, just to give an extreme example. So you don't need to put all your education on right from you know, A levels or your equivalent and degrees and everything onwards is fine. It depends on your age actually as to how much of your education needs to go on there and what education level you reached. So sometimes it's fine to just put your kind of degree and maybe your MA or whatever you've got, or sometimes if you just got GCSEs or A levels, you just put those on, but you don't have to put. And you also need to do it with the most recent stuff first. On a CV, I always want to see whether it's education, whether it's work. I always want to see the most recent first. And yeah, we've talked about all this, the work, and also because you're trying to fit it on 2 sides of A4, the other thing to explain is you don't have to go all the way back and mention all of your jobs. You know, this person could have stopped, probably I would have said, just mention the last 3 jobs, because that's the IT stuff that seems to be more relevant to what they want to do, although it's a little unclear. And then you can put, you know, more employment details supplied upon request or something similar like that, so that you can show that you do have more employment details, but you know, you haven't included them on the CV because there's no room. So you can just put really anything before sort of beyond the last 15-20 years is too long ago to be including, unless it's really key to the job you're going for. Maybe you've worked in a specific company that's very relevant, but it's so long ago that you don't need to include it. Hobbies is a funny one. Some people love people to put hobbies on the CV, some people don't. It depends what your hobbies are. If you know, with all due respect, if you just like reading and going to church on Sundays, as it says here, then you probably don't need to include them. If you do something quite, you know, I don't know, if you've climbed if you've gone hiking on a massive trek and you know, you raise money for charity or something, maybe that kind of thing you can include. But it all depends on how much space you've got on your CV as well, and whether you think sometimes it can be a good icebreaker at an interview if you've got something on your CV that's quite interesting that people want to talk about. But it's not, you don't have to put your hobbies on. And nowadays we don't need references. Everybody knows that they can ask for references. We don't need to say that you can ask for references. We don't need to include references on a CV. So it's just, and people now often go and look on LinkedIn, depending on your industry, because there are some industries like teaching, or I believe some of you may be working in social work. I doubt that LinkedIn would be used as much for that, but in banking or marketing or sales or whatever, if you have a LinkedIn profile, people often go on there, and if you've got reviews of your abilities on there, people who've written recommendations on LinkedIn, people can go and look on there and see about, you know, how you perform, as well as asking for official references. So that's the bad CV. And just this is a sort of CV template that I tend to use. You put your name and everything, but not in the header, as I talked about. You have a 5 or 6 line personal profile. Now, the difference between my CV and a lot of CVs that I see out there is that what I like to do, because I'm very aware that recruiters tend to spend such a short period of time just putting before they go yes, no, on the CV, and anyone on the yes, no, they will then spend longer looking at, but you want to get on that yes pile. So my way of doing that is to combine key skills and achievements. So some people who work with people on CVs, they put the key skills on there, and you can do that, just put key skills on. The reason they do that is often for this applicant tracking system, where you list, say, excellent communication skills, and you can list some of the hard skills as well, kind of advanced Excel, or I'm trying to think of hard skills, coaching skills, whatever it is, you can put stuff like that on there. But and that means that you've got those listed, so it can pick up on those key skills that they're looking for. But also it's good for somebody to look at it and go, oh, okay, so they've got those things that I need all in a list. But the problem with that is you haven't backed it up. Anyone can say, oh, I've really got excellent communication skills, but how do I know that? So the better, my opinion, the better way of doing it is to interweave the communication skills and the achievements. Used my excellent communication skills to achieve X, Y, and Z. So you're showing 5 to 7 achievements of how you saved the company money or time, or you did a project on time and on budget and all that kind of stuff. But you're trying to sort of maybe show some of those soft skills in there as well, that in order to you negotiated, which is a key skill, a deal worth X amount of money, that kind of thing. So that can really give somebody a good idea of who they're getting, and it all has to be relevant to the job you're applying for. There's no point in putting achievements in that are completely irrelevant to what you're looking for. And then you've got your employment history here and your educations and qualifications. Now, I'm aware we're trying to fit in 2 topics into the time, so I am going to move on now. But actually, before I do, it might be worth just asking quickly while we're on this topic, does anyone have any questions at all before I move on? Any questions? Great, thank you. No questions at all? Okay. Let's move on to interview skills then. So, preparation for interviews is absolutely vital, absolutely key. I can't kind of say enough, really, that the more you prepare, the more you do towards the interview, the better you're going to be. So really, really important. First of all, find out as much as you can about the interview. It's okay to ask. You're spending your time going to an interview, and so you deserve to be given some information. Some companies are better than others. Some companies give you an interview pack and they give you loads of information. Other places, it's really hard to get, any information. So it's very dependent, but try and find out, at least, is it a one-to-one interview? Or is there more than one person going to be there? Are you interviewing in a group scenario? You might have to show them a portfolio of work, or give a presentation, or run a workshop, or whatever. So you need to understand what it is, and also try and get a feel for, is this how many interviews there are going to be, what the process is going to be. Obviously, research the company, the role, and the people interviewing you. So it's so important. I think people are a lot more clued up on this now, and I'm surprised that most people know that you have to read up on the company before you go to interview. 20 years ago, when I was interviewing for an administrator, when I worked in HR, I interviewed 5 people, and only one person had done any research about the company. and they got the job because they were very prepared for the, and they'd come prepared, and they really sort of practiced on their questioning, on answering questions, and they were very good, so they got it. But it was interesting that no one else, I mean, it was an oil and gas company, it was it was quite complicated, it wasn't maybe it wasn't the most exciting company, I don't know, I enjoyed it, but yeah, you need to show that you're interested in working for that company by doing some research. And obviously you need to make sure you really have read the job description, you really understand as much as you can about the role. And a lot of people look at who's interviewing them, they go onto LinkedIn, they go and have a little look at who these people are and their background and their experience. It just looks good if you know a bit more about these people. It makes you maybe feel a bit more relaxed because you sort of understand them a bit more and who they are. And also, you might be able to bring into, when you're talking to them, you might be able to say something that kind of gives you that rapport, I was just taking a look at the company and the people on LinkedIn, and I noticed that you're really excellent at X, Y, or Z, and people are flattered when someone does something like that, and it can always help. Okay, so also think about the types of questions you may ask, and we'll come on to talk more about the types of questions later on, so I won't talk too much about that now. And prepare examples and practice. So the questions, there are lots of different types of questions, and you need to have some examples ready to answer some of these questions. So it's really important. I always say to people that it's important to really think about the role and think about, okay, so as I said earlier, let's take working with people, building relationships. Say if in your role it's really important that you need to build relationships with people, then think about a time when you've built a relationship with someone, how you went about it, what happened, what the outcome was, because you might be asked to give examples, and you need to be able to quite easily come up with something. So the better prepared you are, think about your time in work. Really, you're focusing on the last 5 years of work, because that's the most relevant to now. And you're thinking about, what have I done? What you've put on your CV, really, some of the achievements that you've put on your CV, how can you expand on those to really give them a good idea of you and what you can do for the company? And practice. So above all, practice. It's so important. So you might think, oh yeah, I kind of know my experience, I'll be fine, and I'll be okay. But when you come to saying it out loud, it all goes horribly wrong, and you come away going, oh, that was awful. Now, so what the best thing to do is to talk to yourself out loud. So when you're answering the questions, I mean, when I'm preparing to do a workshop like this, I often or a video, it's more difficult with a workshop because it's so long and everything, but sometimes I record videos online, and I always talk about stuff out loud because it sounds so different to what it does in your head. Usually not as good, to be honest. So it's worth then just practicing. And you think, okay, that didn't sound so good, right? What can I say differently? And even better is if you actually video yourself, which is really uncomfortable to do for a lot of people. Not many people like to see themselves on screen, but or even practice in the mirror so you can see yourself if videoing is a step too far, so that you can really hear yourself answering questions and really see what you're doing, and then you can learn from what you're doing and make changes accordingly. Look, see, I didn't bring that up. There you go. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, So let's think about that. So if you're looking at yourself on video, how are you presenting yourself at interview? So there's non-verbal communication. So as well as what you're saying, you always need to think about, how am I communicating from a body language perspective, from a tone of voice perspective? What am I doing? So, and different cultures do things differently. So it might be helpful for you to kind of, and I don't know if Esther's doing this on her workshops or whatever, but thinking about kind of how in Britain and the UK we like to communicate non-verbally versus how you do in Hong Kong, because it is really different. And so I'd say exactly the same if I was visiting a different country as well, because I might be doing something really rude that is like really I think in Japan, is it, I learned ages ago that there's a certain thing that you have to do with business cards. I think you have to touch them and really look at them and everything in order to show respect if someone gives you a business card, whereas some people in the UK will just take them and shove them in their pocket and just not really look at them. I mean, I always try to, because I think it's generally polite, but yeah, that would be really rude if you're, so it's kind of, it's a cultural thing as well as how when you're going to interview, well, in the UK usually we would shake hands and we would maintain eye contact, try and smile a bit sometimes to sort of show more of a warmth, and really show that you're paying attention, sometimes nodding or whatever to show that you're listening. And open body language. So crossing arms is seen as closed body language. Open body language shows that you're open to the information that you're receiving. And so those are sort of things that are really important when you're in an interview. So I love this. Don't waffle. And I'm wondering what, I didn't really think when I wrote that, whether waffle is a real colloquial thing to say in the, it's probably not very good English. So I'm not sure how, I love the exclamation mark either afterwards, but not sure how it translates, but really it's all about make sure your answers are concise. So they are to the point, but not too short, and you don't go off and start talking about completely different topics and then come back to what the question was and then go off and talk about something else and come back again, because the interviewer will lose their train of thought and they won't see you as being as, I don't know, almost as good as if you are really sort of have a structure to your answer and you're really clear in what you're trying to say. And make sure you slow down your speech as well. Generally people, unless you talk slowly, of course, but generally that's something, and I really hope that, I should have said this before, but I hope I'm not speaking too fast for you, because I get a bit overexcited and then I can speak too fast. So I have to think, okay, slow down, and try not to talk too fast, and, be really clear. But if you do, suddenly your mind goes blank and you're like, oh no, I can't, I have no idea how to answer this question, then it's okay. People, that happens. And there's several ways of answering that. You can repeat the question back to the person to buy, sort of what we say, buy yourself some time, to give yourself some time to think about an answer. You can maybe just quickly take a sip of your water. You can ask the interviewer to repeat the question to give yourself some time as well. But I think taking a nice deep breath to calm your nerves can be really helpful as well. So we often hold our breath a bit when we're nervous and tense. So it's really good to take some deep breaths before you go into an interview, as well as, you know, during the interview, to make sure that, you know, it can calm your nerves. Dressing the part is important, so make sure that you you know kind of what's expected. That's all part of that preparation piece. Know what's expected of you in an interview. It always used to be so formal back in the day, and it's less so now than it used to be. Wilson, could you put yourself on mute? I think I.
呢個係呢個 live foundation 咧，即刻 WhatsApp 嚟話有呢個 online 嘛。
Wilson, can you put yourself on mute, because I can hear you, or maybe Esther, you can mute everybody. Nowadays, I would say that it's probably more important. You don't want to be overdressed in a way, but it's better to be overdressed than underdressed. So I would always try and look smart for an interview. There's ties are being worn less than they used to in the UK. And it's really for city jobs that people tend to still wear ties. But I would find out what the dress code is. That's helpful. And end positively, and I will I've got a slide with some questions on later on for you, but think about, I would say, have about 5 questions you can ask at the end of an interview, or up your sleeve, as we say in the UK, so ready to ask, because they may answer a few of them during the interview, and the last thing you want is for them to say, so do you have any questions? And you go, oh no, I think you've answered everything, because it shows a bit of a lack of interest in the role, even if it's true they have answered all the questions you had. So really make sure you've got more questions than you think you need, so that you've definitely got something to ask at the end of an interview. And you know, you can write them down. There's no problem with taking in your CV, your questions, whatever in with you. So make sure, you know, you've got those questions there, and if you are likely to forget them, write them down. And always thank them for their time at the end of the interview, and follow up. A really good piece of advice is to actually follow up with an email, or, you know, follow up on LinkedIn and sort of say thanks for speaking to me, wherever. But it's most people don't do that. And it can set you apart from other candidates if you follow up and say, thanks very much, really enjoyed speaking to you. Whether you did or not, maybe not. You maybe were petrified the whole time, but, you know, enjoyed speaking with you, and, you know, really look forward to getting your feedback. Is a really nice way to kind of finish off that interview. So interview questions. I've got some questions here. These are general questions. Have I got, oh no, I always do that. How do I go back again? There we go. Now I wasn't quite sure how many questions I'd included. So there we go. These are quite common sort of general questions that are asked at interview, and I thought it was worth me including some, and I'm sure that you will get this presentation afterwards, and then you've got them here. So one question that is very, very common, and most people ask a version of, is tell me about yourself. So tell me about yourself, tell me about your experience, tell me about your background, whatever it might be. So try and keep, most interview answers, I would say, should be no less than 2 minutes, and probably try not to be more than about 3 minutes long. So you're doing kind of enough, giving enough information. So tell me about yourself. You could go on for hours, but really try and keep it concise. Talk to them about, and try not to just go chronologically through your CV. Try and keep it interesting, give them some insight into you, some interesting information, but keep it on a professional level, and really maybe give them sort of a recent achievement, something that you're really proud of that you've done recently, but don't go into too much detail because you might want to use it later, but just to make them go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then, you know, you can talk about that further on. Another really popular question generally is about strengths and weaknesses, particularly weaknesses. Tell me one of your weaknesses, they might say, or what are your key weaknesses? What they're trying to find out here is both that you're not someone that's so arrogant they don't think they have any weaknesses, which they wouldn't want to employ someone like that. They want you to be kind of, you know, self-aware and know that everyone has weaknesses, but also they don't want someone to then go, well, I'm really bad at this and I'm terrible at that, and you just like list all these things. Generally what we're looking for is something that you were weak at, but you've worked on and you've greatly improved. And you could acknowledge that you're still working on it and you're still making sure that you don't slip into old habits and stuff. But generally, it's something you had that you've now improved on. And a tip I would say, try not to use perfectionism as a weakness. Again, 20 years ago, it's always been a common question in the UK for weaknesses, and everybody used to say, oh, I'm a perfectionist, because they thought, well, you know, that's quite a good thing to have, really, isn't it? Being a perfectionist, it means that I've got attention to detail and that I'm always, you know, trying to do really well. But I think interviewers are so bored of that answer now, and it's almost like they groan when they hear someone say, you know, I'm a perfectionist. And actually nowadays, not everybody wants someone, because they think, oh, does that mean that they're not going to hit deadlines or get the work done? So I would, if you are a perfectionist, try and think of another way of wording that, and also just think about what are your weaknesses and come up with a good answer of like how you've improved on it. And then obviously they want to see that you've done research about the company and why you want to work for them. Would be tied into something about the company, and you know, if you're passionate about something to do with a company and you think you've got the skills, you know, and talk about the skills you have and how you could add value and to that. Okay, I'm aware of time, so I am going to go through this. Right, so I'm going to whiz through. This is something on the internet that you can look up more as well. It's very, very common technique. So, you know, if you want to find out more, there's articles written on it. But the STAR technique, if you're going for an interview and they tell you that it's going to be behavioral questions or competency-based questions, then a good format for answering one of those questions is to use the STAR technique. These types of questions are things where they say, tell me about a time when you did X, Y, or Z. That's a behavioral type question. Or they could ask you, how do you work effectively in a team? And they don't, in these questions, they always, even if they don't say, tell me about a time, if they say, how do you work effectively in a team, you can give a bit of an overview of how you work effectively, but then give an example. Always give an example to bring to light how you work effectively in a team. Or, you know, do you work well? How do you, I'm just trying to think of another example. How do you build relationships in a team or in a company or whatever? They're always wanting an example. So, and the way you can give your example really nicely is, first of all, to set the scene, to give the situation. Whilst working in X company as this in this role, I was asked to look at improving a certain process. And then you expose, sometimes the situation and task almost mingle into one, but sometimes they're quite separate. It depends. So you can go on to say, so there was this process that wasn't working, and I was needed to have a look at it and see how it would, the impact it was having on the company, and how I could then make it work more effectively. I'm just pulling something out of the air here. So then you go on and you look, what were the actions that you took? Now, this is 70% of the answer, is showing them what you did in order to improve that process, for example. So go through some bullets really of this, I did this, and I did this. And don't forget the result, because when I do interview practice with my clients, we literally go through a question. I ask them a question and then they give me an answer, and you can't believe the amount of times that people don't actually tell me a result. So they just tell me the actions and that's it. But you want to show off, like, this is what I did and the result was you. And it's always, around, I don't know, people, you coach people to success, you saved the company money, you saved the company time, you helped people, you did something that is really great. So here are some example questions, and I'm not going to go through them because you can have them and have a look at them, but planning, and this is what I mean about practicing, thinking about how do you manage your time to ensure you meet deadlines. Have a think about how you do that. Give an example of like a day and how you would manage your time. Give an example of what you did in your last job to make sure that you were able to hit the deadlines. Talk about if there was a dissatisfied customer, for example, if you're working with customers and they want to know about that. Think about a situation where you had someone complain, and what did you do to make them go away feeling really happy and really satisfied? So it's coming up with these examples, looking at the job description, and if it talks about time management, if it talks about customer service, if it talks about working in a team, problem solving, attention to detail, you're thinking, come up with an example that I can use. And they won't be exactly the same questions, they could be anything, but you need a time management one, a customer relation, management one, depending on your role. And that's why looking at that job description when you're going to interview and seeing what they're looking for is important, so you know the kinds of questions that you think you might get. And these are the questions you can ask, some examples here. Culture of the organization, really key. You are interviewing them as well. I think people are sometimes so keen to get a job, they forget that if you feel the organization isn't right for you, you don't have to accept the job. Or at least, if you're in a situation where you have to get a job because you really need the money, you can accept a job. I shouldn't really say this, but you can accept a job and then still be trying to find something that's better. If it's not the right culture for you, then don't automatically just go, oh, they've offered me a job, I've got to accept it. It's not just about money, culture. People leave an organization. The top reason is because they don't get on with their manager, really. But one of the second or third reasons is the culture of the company. They just don't fit. It's not, do you want it to be a family environment, friendly environment? Do you want it to be fast-paced corporate? You've got to think about, what do I want? And does this company match that? But so these are the kinds of, you're not just asking these questions to have a question to ask. You want to come up with questions that are really important to you and that you want to know about. If progression and training is important, which I know for younger people, certainly I work with, is really key. I get that a lot. Oh, I really want to progress. Then ask about it. And if the company doesn't support progression, it might not be the right company for you. And then I've put these, I haven't got much to expand on these, so I can whiz through them. But I just wanted to include, because we do have a lot of video interviews nowadays since the pandemic. So it's just really key to think about making sure that you have practiced with the technology, because there's all sorts of different links. You know, there's Zoom, there's Teams, you know, might not have downloaded it beforehand. Make sure that everything's downloaded, everything's sorted before you you have your interview, because interviews are important to get right. I love the fact that this is the only thing where, obviously, I'm thinking there is no translation for Wi-Fi. So it is Wi-Fi. So turn the Wi-Fi off on other devices. If you've got slow connection and you want this, you don't want to be continually sort of on, like, hanging when you're on the video interview and they can't hear you because your connection is poor. So turn it off around the house if you really want to, and that will speed up your Wi-Fi. Make sure you've got a good background, that you've got some privacy, it's quiet, it looks good, that kind of thing. Make sure that the lighting is good so that people can see your face and your facial expressions. Dress appropriately. By that, I really mean that sometimes on video patterns are not great. So patterns can get all pixelated and it's quite distracting, or you might have like jewelry on that's jangly and it's really annoying, and that can be in face-to-face or online, to be honest. So yeah, be a bit careful of that. Turn up early so that you make sure that you're all prepared, so if anything does go wrong, you've got time. Look at the camera rather than, some people have a screen over here and the last thing you want to do is interview and they just see the side of your face. So you really do need to look at the camera. And practice with a friend. I worked with a client that practiced with their dad. They were younger and they practiced with their dad before their interview, and they both were on different computer and they were just practicing to get used to the feel of it. And that can be quite nice to do as well. So there we go. I just a little bit over time, but just about managed it. So that's the end of the presentation today, and the workshop today. Lots of information there for you. I'll open it up if people have got time, or you can obviously send Esther your questions if you don't want to ask me today, and I can answer them offline. But does anyone have any questions? I know sometimes it's a bit awkward, isn't it, asking questions when
you can stop sharing and then people can maybe come up and ask questions. Feel free to ask questions, please. This is the time that and Tanya can answer, as well as myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. So actually, when we prepare the CV, should we put our right to work on the CV as a reference?
Yeah, I probably would. You're shaking your head, Esther, or are you just listening?
Well, I'm just thinking like putting the right to work. I think you're applying because you have the right to work, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been asked that question before. I presume that if you didn't have the right to work, then you wouldn't be applying. So maybe you don't need to. I know what you mean, though. The reason I was a bit like, is because, if they see your name and they might think, oh, maybe they're free, and they see that you worked in Hong Kong or whatever, then they're thinking, oh, is it? But to be honest, they can just ask the question ultimately, and you have to have all the right paperwork in order to be able to start. So I would think that you'd be able to get through, and they probably, if they were worried about it, they would email you before they even asked you for an interview. So. Okay,
yeah, thanks.
Any other questions at all?
I would like to ask about the thank you letter you mentioned. I heard that, I'm not sure if it is also common practice in the UK, because I read some online discussion on that, and it seems that some UK people doesn't like that. So I would like to confirm, it's also a common practice to send a thank you letter in the UK as well. Thank you.
Sorry, you say, I didn't quite understand. Are you saying it's a common practice to send a covering letter? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, thank you letter.
A thank you letter. It's not common practice actually. So a lot of people don't do it, but what I was saying with that is that it can kind of make you, set you apart. So I think that I talked to a recruiter recently, and they confirmed that the candidates that were following up afterwards were more likely to get like a second interview or whatever. It's just good practice to do it, but people don't often do it. So you don't have to, and if you don't have time or you don't feel comfortable, it doesn't feel right to do it, then don't do it. But it is often a good thing to do. And another thing you can do, as well as sending I wouldn't say a letter, no one sends letters these days, but an email or whatever, just saying thank you for your time would look good. But there are exceptions, and also maybe connecting with the person on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, if it's that kind of role, can sometimes be beneficial to do as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you ask some questions in the chat?
That's if you are able to just give us feedback, like some of those. The first question is really for us to help us to plan for the next workshop. What are the difficulties when you are looking for a job, working in the UK, language, application process, CV writing, culture, etc. And then the second question is just like the feedback, really, on how you found the employability today, how you found the workshop. So you can type in the chat, or you can send the email privately, or you can send an email. You can type privately, or you can send an email back replying to Max, please. That would help us just to plan for the next workshop, and then to kind of like understand where you are, whether you are applying for jobs, you are still working on your CV, or you've managed to get into a job as well, please. Any other questions? We've got many people here. Anne, Cami, do you have any other questions for Tanya, please? Feel free. Don't feel. Don't hide. we know
it was
asking. Yeah.
It was obviously very clear, Esther. That's what it was.
Sometimes it's not like that.
No. So I know it can be a bit awkward asking the questions.
Either it's very clear or it's not clear at all.
It was very clear. What are you talking about? So look, maybe if you don't feel comfortable asking, you could type in the chat as well your question, because if you don't feel confident speaking, but then I don't know if you might not feel confident writing either. But as I say, you can always ask questions afterwards, send an email, and it can be passed on to me. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I also have questions about the CV.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, on the CV, we have to kind of, list out our career history.
Mm-hmm.
But say if I have been working for companies for 15 years,
mm-hmm.
I may, actually take on different positions.
Mm.
So do I have to write down all the positions I took in the past, or I just have to say, maybe I worked for the company for 15 years, but the latest role will be this too, something like that?
So I would headline it as the latest role.
Yeah.
And I might put you can do lots of different things with that, really, and it depends. Often it depends on space. So you could put like a little bit of information in sort of free writing text, saying, I started with a company as X and have been promoted numerous times into this, to this role, sort of thing. So you're giving a bit of an outline, and then,
Mm-hmm.
And the key responsibilities and achievements in this role are, and then just write that. Or you could put a big headline of the, the company and the years you worked there, and then individually put down, you know, so the role you're in now, and put some bullet points, and then put the role after, put some bullet points, and then the role after. But it depends how many jobs you've had as to, you know, if that's practical to do that, really. So you can approach it in different ways depending on the sort of the amount of space you've got. Say, for example, you've only done that job, you were there for 15 years, you've done 3 roles in that time. I would probably put the, you know, you worked, say, for, I don't know, Coca-Cola, from, I'm now going to show that my maths is terrible, the past 15 years, say, let's say it was 12 years to make it easy. So 2010 to 2022. And then you put from, you know, you've got one role, and then you highlight under it, and then you do the next role, and you highlight, and you do the next role, and that would sit quite nicely on your CV. But if you've had 6 roles in the company and you've done jobs since before that, then I would probably just say, you know, I started in the company as X, I've been promoted lots of times, I now am this role, and then just give a bit of an overview of what you've done in the current role.
Yep, got it.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
We actually had someone, I had an interview last week with someone from Hong Kong who did 12 years. She worked for one company for 12 years. And that's how she was able to, just because she did within that company for 12 years, she was able to do different positions. So she was just able to highlight that and then add other 2 previous, you know, employment history, and that was enough. Yeah, because I think for an employer to see that you've been in a company for 12 years, that in itself, I think is a good thing. You know, it's a very positive indication that you are able to commit for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things nowadays that it's good that you've stayed somewhere a long time. But actually, if you haven't stayed somewhere for a long time, it's not seen as a bad thing so much anymore as it used to be. It used to be really frowned upon if you hadn't stayed at a company for longer than sort of 2 to 3 years. Whereas I think the sort of younger generation tend to move around quite a lot. And so employers have had to change their views on that and are more open to people who have moved around a bit more. But yeah, they do still, it is still quite good to see someone that's been at a company for over 2 years and you think, okay, they might stay with us.
Yeah, I just got a question here, which I'm not very sure. I won't mention the name, but it says the most difficult is poor English. Then from email of Light Foundation, so I'm a bit it's useful. But what I would say, don't let because you are learning English, don't let that become like a barrier. Because if you are like a professionals in Hong Kong, you can still look for a job here. English people understand, you know, employers understand that obviously you're a foreigner, English is not your first language, but it shouldn't deter you from applying for a job. And you, as you are obviously you are learning English, you are practicing speaking to different people, and at the same time, if you got a job and you truly understand the job spec and you're able to apply, because sometimes you can read a job and you're able to use your own language to understand it, and you can actually apply the skills that you have. So the English should not keep you away from applying for jobs. Apply. The more you apply for jobs, you're improving your writing. The more, if you get interviews, you go for interviews, you start improving your speaking, you know, your interview skills as well. So you gain more confident, you become more and more confident. But if you stay away, that is going to prolong the process of getting a job. So just go for it. Go for it. And people
I agree. I think, you know, and I always sort of, you almost hope when I work with my clients, I'm almost hoping that their first interview, they don't really want the job, because it's always good to actually go and practice a bit in a real life example. So, you know, practice then, because everybody likes, well, there's a few people out there that love interviews, but most people sort of don't feel that comfortable, and it's a good way of practicing. And especially when English isn't your first language, it's so hard. But not all jobs need perfect English. It's good to try and get the CV as good as possible, because it's just your foot in the door. So it's, you know, you kind of need that to be good, and you can get people to look at it and make sure that the English is good. But when you actually come face to face with people, it might be a role where it's okay, you know, as long as they can understand. They might give you a test to do or something, and they can see that, you know, your skills are strong. Then they you know, it could well be fine. And by not going, you're stopping yourself from getting this great job. So
yeah, that's very true. The other one is how to write a CV if I wasn't working in the last few years.
Oh, that's not a problem anymore. Used to be a real no. Used to be terrible when I was in HR. I'd look at things and we'd be told, oh no, they've had some time out. It's like, heaven forbid that you maybe have had a child or something. Oh, terrible. Whereas now, no, it's much better, especially actually with the pandemic, when there was so much so many people made redundant. So it was just very, I mean, some people, poor things, were made redundant like 3 times in a year or whatever. It's awful. So I think, you know, it's really fine. And it's just about how you word it on a CV. So it's, you know, if you've had time out to have children, it's a career break. Generally, if you just put a career break in there, it's better to talk about it than just have this big gap on your CV where I'm thinking, oh, what have they been doing for 2 years, or, you know, even 6 months? I want to know, but I'm not going to look at it badly. I'm just going to go, okay, so they took some time out, and it could be that you wanted to, you know, go and do some further training, or I don't know, you wanted to take a sabbatical and go and travel the world. Whatever you wanted to do, people are quite much more accepting these days, but you just need to be honest and put it on your CV.
Yeah, and then, for example, if you're like, you took time off to care for your, like, a child or family, you can still, you know, those are what you've done, like as a mother, that's a home management. So you can still translate those skills. You can say home management, and then you can now explain how, like, management of the time, appointments, finance, so that you can actually translate that into a job.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I took sort of 5 to 6 years out to bring up my daughter. It was the hardest job I ever did, I tell you. I came back for a break, and you know, you can write stuff in about, as you say, there's lots of transferable skills. And it does look even better if you've done any voluntary stuff. Maybe you know, you've volunteered and helped out at the child's school, or you've but also just organization skills are really key. You need, I don't know, negotiation skills with a toddler have to be pretty good. Event management, sorting out parties. There's all sorts of things that, you know, so it's how you translate them. And, you know, I looked at my friend's CV recently, and she was going back into work after 10-year break. And we got some quite good stuff on there to show what she'd been doing in the time that she was off, even though she hadn't done loads, but we just so we had to kind of try and but you know, there was a lot there because of those skills you need at that time.
Okay, do we have any more things from here? So how to write a CV. We will do some CV writing anyway. We do have a workshop tomorrow. That will take a bit longer, but this is in person in Hackney tomorrow. So if you're able to come to Hackney, by all means, let us know. Yeah, but do you have any other questions? Otherwise, we may let Tanya go.
Okay.
Louise, did you want to ask?
No, just actually I have not worked for 10 years, just like Tanya's friends. So I just want to ask the question. But when Tanya told about her friends, so I didn't have any question because I haven't been working for 10 years.
But you know what, that is fine. It's a little bit harder because it's more about confidence, I think, than anything, Louisa, is thinking about how on earth am I going to remember what to do after 10 years. What did you used to do back in the day?
You mean the work that I before?
Yes.
I'm work in a garment factory and did merchandising.
In merchandising,
and
okay.
And we'll meet up with the designers and to create a collection,
okay.
And responsible for the production, something like that.
Okay. But it's difficult, and I think it's so I was just being nosy then, really. But I mean, it depends whether you want to go on and do it again. But I do think that it's absolutely fine, and they see it a lot with people having had time out of work. But it is how you think about what have I been doing in the time I've had off, and how can I sell that and show my transferable skills within that time. Did you do any voluntary work, or did you even things that you maybe don't even think about, you just did because you were being nice to someone or whatever? Can I sort of, maybe you kind of helped care for somebody else's child or whatever for like some time, and then it was almost like a swap or something, but you could maybe sort of show that in some way on your CV. So it's just thinking creatively. It sounds like you're a creative person from what you did before. So thinking creatively as to how you can show the skills that you gained over that time, that 10-year break.
Yes.
And the other thing I would say, Louise, is I believe employers mostly prefer, they look at what you're doing currently. So yes, they'll look at the previous work that you've done, but if you're able to maybe do some voluntary work, like maybe apply for voluntary work now, and then even if you're in a company or non-profit organization, like just for the first day, update your CV, and once that is reflecting on your CV, you send your CV out today and is showing that you're doing voluntary work for this particular company, employers are more likely to contact you than a CV that doesn't have any current, showing like you worked 10 years ago. But so that is a very added advantage that many people don't actually look at. I've seen so many people, I've worked with so many people like came in, they didn't have any experience, they just did maybe 2 weeks, one month, and they got really high profile jobs with very high profile companies in the city as well as locally. So that's something but
also you don't know, Esther, I mean, that's such a great point, and you don't know like who these people that you're working for know either. They might have contacts, because a lot of job searching now is about networking and who and obviously you guys have come in and maybe haven't lived here long, I don't know, but and you might not know so many people in this country, and so if you can then start volunteering for somewhere and they've got friends and they've got contacts and stuff, then it can really help you. But voluntary work is so vital on a CV, especially if you've had some time out. And actually what my friend did was like, which kind of completely helped her, was she wanted to just be a TA for a while because she's got 3 kids, and it's very easy because when you're a teaching assistant, you work school hours and all that kind of thing. And she used to be a teacher, so she volunteered for a bit at the school, just at her children's school, and then she literally walked the interview because they knew her already. And so, sorry, walks is like when it's just easy. She just kind of didn't even
but at least she needs to have the teaching certificate, something like that. She has to study something about teaching to be a teaching assistant.
Not to be a teaching assistant, no, you don't need any qualifications. You do to be a teacher. And she may well go back to that, but at the moment she's happy to just be a teaching assistant. I think they're being cheeky now and they're going, oh, actually, when the teacher's off, we've got we've got this qualified teacher that's like, you know, that we can kind of put in and use. And they do that even if you're not qualified, and you show that you're
that's
really
good. Then maybe I can think of to be a teaching assistant also.
It's very popular, I have to say, with people who have got children, because you get this, you know, you get school hours off and everything, and school holidays off, and you only have to work school hours, so it is incredibly popular to do that, I have to say. But yeah, why not? I think, you know, if you don't have to have any qualification, just be able to work with children, really.
Yes,
want
thank
to
you.
work with children.
And then you can apply through different agencies as well. So you work as and when you are able to do the work. So it's no, you know, if you work through an agency, it's more flexible, you know, and they can send you to different places. I've done that. I worked some years back as a teaching assistant. Like Tanya said, I didn't have any qualifications. I came from I was doing some like looking after children with special needs. So, but when I went into the school, sometimes they would ask you to actually do the teaching planning and everything, but most of the time I just stuck like just assisting the teacher, which is really cool. You don't really do much. You pray with others. I think maybe things have changed now, but that's a very good way as well to, you know, to go through, and then you can use all the different skills and experiences that you've acquired all over the years, and they just kind of like be able to apply.
It's good to hear that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. No problem. I'm going to have to go, Esther, but there was one more question which I will quickly answer. So Carmen, you're not available for 6 months. Should I keep job hunting and sending the CV out? I would say it's a difficult one. That if you said 3 months, I would say definitely, because it can take quite a long time to find a job. 6 months is longer, but I don't see there's any harm actually in doing it, because it's all good practice. And you know, you can be invited for an interview, you could go for an interview, and you're practicing all the time, and then if you get offered it, it's then your choice as to whether you go, oh, okay, maybe I need to get some childcare or whatever, if I really, really want it. You know, so I think it's probably would be worth doing it, to just keep, as long as you can keep your motivation going. So understand that, you know, almost treat it as, this is practice. I'm gonna go for this, and it's really good learning, but don't get disheartened if you know you get rejections, because we all get lots of rejections. We get lucky sometimes, and we get the first or second thing we look for, and then sometimes it takes a long time, and you have to try and keep yourself motivated. So it's just treat it as, this is me practicing until I'm available to get a job.
I agree. I was gonna say the same. Like, I think for the sake of practicing, you can go for it, apply. But like Tanya said, in terms of the rejection, you know, it's part of the whole process. People say yes or no, but it would help, because then you can, if you're looking for one specific job, then you can have loads of different, search different kinds of companies, and then apply, whether by CV, emails, and where you get a response. Obviously, if they invite you for an interview, go for it, and just to help yourself, like, get into the system, understand the different questions they're asking, and then after you do the interview, then you can review yourself, how you did, and then you can even maybe ask for feedback. So that's going to kind of like affect your final job after a year. But okay, I think we are done. If you don't have any other questions, Tanya, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
No problem. It's been brilliant. I've loved it, and take care, everybody. Good luck with everything, and
thank you.
I hope to speak to you soon, Esther, as well.